For Sam Carter, summer mornings meant fresh coffee, a rustling newspaper, and the rooster's familiar crow. But this year, peace had a new enemy. The rooster's crow drifted lazily across the fields, mixing with the soft hum of insects and the distant clatter of a tractor from a neighboring farm. Sam rocked gently on his front porch, one hand curled around his chipped ceramic mug, the other holding the local paper, the Willow Creek Herald. The paper still left a bit of ink on his fingers, and he liked it that way. On the radio, tuned to AM 760, Hank Snow's voice crooned something about lonesome trains and dusty roads. The static fuzzed in and out like it always did when the weather started heating up, but it didn't bother Sam. Nothing much did, except maybe that crisp white bulletin fluttering on the end of his driveway. He saw it while walking down to check the mailbox, a little earlier than usual because Lily, his granddaughter, was still sleeping, and he'd woken up with a mind to get the chores done before the real heat came. The paper was pinned neatly to the wooden post, bright and official-looking, with a bold headline that made him grunt. Community Aesthetic Plan, Expanding Vision for a Unified Future. Sam didn't need to read the fine print to know who it came from. Karen Whitmore and her Homeowners Association were at it again. Expanding Vision, he muttered, folding the bulletin neatly and sliding it into the mailbox with a dry chuckle. Next thing you know, they'll want me to paint the cows beige. Back on the porch, he found himself staring across the field at the neat rows of identical houses in Maple Ridge Estates. 5 years ago, that land had been a patch of woods and pasture. Now it was a wall of beige siding and paved sidewalks. Karen had moved in the second year the subdivision was finished, and the town hadn't known peace since. Lily wandered out onto the porch in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes and dragging her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Grandpa, why do they all have the same color houses?" Sam took a sip of coffee, eyes still on the development. "Because folks like Karen think matching colors make better neighbors." Lily wrinkled her nose. "That's silly. I like red barns better." He smiled. "Me too, sweetheart." Later that morning, after feeding the chickens and checking on the goats, Sam drove into town to pick up a bag of seed and catch breakfast at June's Diner. The diner sat at the corner of Main and Jefferson, where the town's only stoplight hung crooked year-round, blinking red like it had nothing better to do. June was already at the counter pouring coffee, her gray bun high and her voice sharp as ever. "Well, look who's up before the heat sets in," she said, sliding a mug toward him before he'd even sat down. Sam gave her a nod. "Saw another one of those HOA flyers this morning. Karen's dreaming up ways to fix what ain't broken." June snorted. "She came in here last week talking about neighborhood cohesion. Tried to suggest I repaint the diner's shutters." She leaned in with a smirk. "Told her if she touched my shutters, I'd serve her eggs with the shells still in." A few heads turned from booths nearby, locals who'd had their run-ins with Maple Ridge's self-appointed queen. Someone muttered something about mailbox height violations. The room shared a quiet laugh, the kind that only small towns know, dry, weary, and familiar. Sam finished his coffee and drove back to the farm, half expecting the day to pass quietly. Instead, as he pulled into the driveway, he saw a sleek, silver SUV parked near the property line. Karen stood beside it, flanked by 2 HOA board members, all dressed like they were heading to a corporate seminar instead of walking through cow country. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," Karen called as he stepped out of his truck. Her smile was tight, practiced. "Ms. Whitmore," Sam replied, adjusting his ball cap. "Something I can help you with?" "We're just here on a friendly visit," she said, already moving toward his barn. "There have been some concerns raised by the Maple Ridge community regarding the appearance and auditory impact of your property." Sam followed slowly, arms crossed. "Auditory impact?" "The rooster," she said, as if it were obvious. "Some of our residents are being disturbed by its early crowing." Sam raised an eyebrow. "It's a rooster, not a car alarm." Karen cleared her throat as if trying to cleanse the conversation. Also, the red barn. It's quite jarring against the backdrop of our neutral palette. It's been red since 1962. Well, perhaps it's time for an update. We're distributing letters. She handed him a crisp white envelope. Just a simple request for compliance with community harmony standards. He opened it without flinching. Inside was a full-page notice, printed on HOA letterhead, outlining suggested aesthetic changes for properties within visible proximity to Maple Ridge. "Let me stop you there," Sam said calmly. "My farm isn't in your HOA. I don't pay dues, I don't vote, and I don't answer to your standards." Karen didn't blink. "But your land is in clear view from several of our properties, and visual consistency helps maintain home values." "You can tell your folks if they want a better view," Sam said, folding the letter and tucking it into his back pocket. "They're welcome to buy a painting." One of the board members shifted awkwardly. Karen's jaw tightened. "We're trying to be reasonable, Mr. Carter." "And I'm trying to enjoy my morning." He turned and walked away. Behind him, Karen's heels clicked against gravel as she followed the others back to the SUV. That evening, Lily sat cross-legged on the porch, flipping through a picture book. "Grandpa," she said without looking up, "do you think I could have a lemonade stand this summer, like in the books?" Sam smiled, rocking gently. "You dreaming of becoming a lemonade tycoon?" She giggled. "No, I just want to earn money for a bike." "Well, we'll find a way, long as you don't start painting the barn beige." Night fell quiet over Carter Farm, the stars peeking out over the distant ridge. Sam was about to lock the front door when something caught his eye. A plain white envelope slid just past the threshold. No stamp, no return address. He picked it up, unfolded it slowly. The paper smelled faintly of perfume and printer ink. In thick black letters, typed and centered, was the message: "Your time here is ending. Sell, or we make it hard." A simple lemonade stand became the battleground no one expected, and the spark everyone remembered. The Saturday sun pressed down hard on the gravel shoulder of the Carter driveway, where Lily carefully arranged her hand-painted sign between two buckets of rocks. The letters weren't even, and one E tilted like it was about to fall over, but she was proud of it. Lemonade 25C, with a little heart drawn under the price. She had spent the morning squeezing lemons, stirring sugar water, and asking Sam questions about fair pricing. He told her she could charge $1, but Lily insisted 25 cents felt more summer. Sam sat a few yards away in his porch rocker, a tall glass of iced tea sweating beside him. He watched her fuss with the mason jars and fold a red-checkered dish towel just so. The cicadas buzzed from the trees lining the road, and the air smelled faintly of cut grass and honeysuckle. It was the kind of slow, ordinary afternoon that made the years melt away. "Just stay near the road, not past the fence," Sam called gently. "You know how folks around here get." Lily nodded and adjusted her sun hat. "I'm staying right here, Grandpa." By mid-afternoon, a few cars slowed down. A pair of teenage boys on bikes stopped for a cup, paid in quarters, and asked if she took Venmo. She blinked at them, said no, and they left laughing. A young mom with a stroller pulled over next, thanking Lily for giving the little guy something to smile about. Sam raised his glass in greeting, and she smiled back. Everything felt right. And then Karen drove by. The silver SUV crept past the farm's entrance like a cat stalking the edge of a yard. Karen didn't stop, didn't wave, just slowed enough to get a good look at the lemonade stand, her sunglasses angled toward Lily like a lens of judgment. Then she sped off without a word. Sam didn't say anything at the time, but his grip on the armrest tightened. An hour later, the heat had settled in like a thick blanket. Lily was down to her last pitcher, cheeks flushed pink, when a sheriff's cruiser pulled onto the gravel. Sam stood up slowly, resting one hand on the porch post. The car door opened, and out stepped Deputy Delgado, a young officer with a nervous smile and a tan line where his sunglasses usually rested. "Afternoon, Mr. Carter," Delgado said, nodding. Sam tipped his hat. "Deputy." Delgado looked from Sam to the little table, then back. "We, got a call. Said there was, unlicensed commerce happening. Something about food safety laws and zoning restrictions." Sam took a deep breath, calm but firm. "It's Lemonade. She's 9, and this is private property." Delgado held up both hands. "I figured, just doing the round. HOA called it in, said it was encroaching on visual standards for the neighborhood." Sam didn't blink. "HOA's got no jurisdiction here." Delgado nodded, agreed. "Just had to check the box. Looks like everything's fine." He glanced at Lily and smiled. "Nice stand, by the way." Lily offered him a cup for free, which he politely declined, saying he was still on duty. Sam watched him drive off, the gravel crunching under his tires. That evening, back inside, Sam reached into the cabinet above the fridge and pulled down the battered metal box where he kept all the HOA correspondence. Stamped letters, printed notices, even a flyer about approved mailbox designs. On the side of the box, in permanent marker, were the words, "Nonsense." He slid the new letter in, then poured himself a second glass of tea. At June's diner, word traveled faster than cell reception. June herself posted about the Lemonade incident on the town's Facebook page, half incredulous, half entertained. Within an hour, comments rolled in. "What's next? Ticketing sidewalk chalk. Karen strikes again. I'm coming by tomorrow. I want 3 cups." Sunday morning came with an unexpected line of cars. Sam woke to the sound of tires on gravel and the high giggles of children. When he walked outside, Lily was already back at her post, wearing a new apron June had given her, embroidered with lemons and the words, "CEO, Carter's Country Coolers." There was a folding chair for Sam, set up under the old oak by the fence. Someone had even brought a beach umbrella. Folks weren't just buying lemonade, they were making a point. A pair of lawn chairs appeared on the side of the road. A man in his 60s with a dog sat sipping from a plastic cup. Someone brought cookies. One family brought a boombox and played country music from the 90s. By noon, Lily had to make a new sign. "Sold out? Be back soon." Karen drove by again, twice, but didn't stop. The second time, someone waved sarcastically. She didn't wave back. Late that afternoon, when the crowd thinned and Lily was napping on the couch with lemon-stained fingers, Sam returned to the porch. The quiet had settled in again, like dust after a parade. He leaned back in the rocker and looked out toward Maple Ridge, the neat line of houses just visible through the trees. He didn't hear the knock, only noticed the envelope tucked carefully behind the screen door when he got up to switch on the porch light. This one looked different, more formal. No HOA stamp, but clearly deliberate. Inside was a single printed page. Notice of concern. Possible health code violations due to unauthorized food sales and livestock proximity. Zoning inspection may be scheduled. Sam stared at the paper, then folded it slowly and walked into the kitchen. He opened the nonsense box and added it to the stack. The lid clanged shut with a satisfying finality. What started with a glass of lemonade now had the whole town thirsty for justice. By the end of the following week, the lemonade stand situation, as it was now being called at June's diner, had reached something close to local folklore. No one could quite agree who first brought up the idea of staging a little rebellion, but it didn't matter much. Once the seed was planted, it took root fast. On Tuesday morning, Greg Turner was already seated at his usual spot by the diner window, halfway through his bacon and black coffee. When Sam walked in, the place was humming. Every table had at least one person muttering about Karen, and the air smelled like frying butter and warm gossip. "She's been itching to push that fence further for years," Greg said as Sam slid into the booth across from him. He kept his voice low, but his eyes glinted with something more than just irritation. "This ain't about lemonade, and you know it." Sam said nothing at first, just nodded as June poured him a refill without asking. Greg reached under the table and pulled out a manila folder, sliding it across like they were in some sort of spy movie. "You didn't get this from me." Inside were copies of emails, HOA board chatter that had leaked through a chain of disgruntled homeowners. Karen had been corresponding regularly with someone named M. Riggs, the signature line reading Redwood Partners, Residential Development Strategy. The emails referenced clearing adjacent eyesores and expansion feasibility pending community compliance. Sam flipped through the pages slowly. "They want the farm." Greg nodded. "And they've got a plan. Karen's been laying the groundwork for months. Phony complaints, pressure tactics. You're the last big holdout between them and full rezoning." Sam closed the folder carefully and slid it back. "Thanks, Greg." That afternoon he drove into town and parked outside the county clerk's office. Deputy Hank was sitting on the front steps with a bottle of Coke and a look that said he'd rather be anywhere else. Sam sat down beside him. "Need a copy of my deed, parcel lines, zoning history, whatever you can dig up." Hank raised an eyebrow. "Karen got you that riled?" "She's not working alone," Sam said, "and I'd like to know just how far this HOA thinks it can reach." Inside, a clerk helped him print certified copies of his property lines. The documents were yellowed but intact, filed decades ago under Carter James E., his father. The zoning code marked it clearly as agricultural land outside the Maple Ridge HOA boundary by several hundred feet. Back home, Sam laid the papers on the kitchen table. Lily watched him from the doorway. "Are they trying to take the farm?" she asked, her voice small. Sam didn't answer right away. He just gave a little nod and said, "Not if I have anything to say about it." Meanwhile, Linda Foster, Boaz, once fined by the HOA for hanging red and green lights past New Year's, was walking door to door in Maple Ridge. Her printed forms called for a vote of no confidence in Karen Whitmore, citing misuse of HOA funds, harassment of non-members, and undisclosed ties to external developers. At first, a few doors closed in her face, but by the fourth day, people were inviting her in for coffee and signing without being asked. June was the one who suggested the event. "Call it what you want," she told Sam, "but folks are itching to show Karen what neighborly really looks like." They settled on Neighbors and Lemonade Day, a kind of impromptu celebration of everything the HOA couldn't control. Mismatched lawn chairs, handmade signs, unruly pets, and, of course, plenty of lemonade. Flyers went up on bulletin boards inside the diner, even at the church. Bring your lawn chairs, your kids, and your favorite pie. No dress code, no bylaws. Saturday morning came with clear skies and the smell of sun-warmed grass. Sam set up folding tables along the fence line, Lily at his side pouring fresh lemonade into giant glass jugs. June showed up with 3 pies and a battery-powered radio. By noon, the Carter side of the road looked like a county fair. Then Karen showed up. She didn't step out of the SUV right away, just sat there behind the wheel, staring. When she did emerge, it was in heels, holding a clipboard, lips tight as wire. People quieted as she walked across the gravel shoulder, but it wasn't respect. It was curiosity. Sam saw Greg whisper something to Hazel Truitt, the young reporter from the Willow Gazette, who had shown up to observe the cultural conflict, as she put it. Karen reached the first table and pointed at the hand-lettered sign, "No permit?" Sam stood from his chair and addressed the crowd, voice even. "Private land, agricultural zoning, community gathering, Nothing illegal about that. Karen turned, eyes scanning the crowd for support, but most folks avoided her gaze. One man in a tank top said, "Relax, Karen. It's lemonade, not moonshine." Someone else shouted, "Try smiling for once." A round of chuckles followed. Her composure cracked just enough for Sam to see it, the edge of desperation behind her perfect posture. She snapped, "You'll all be hearing from the HOA board," then stormed back toward her vehicle, muttering about lawsuits. Hazel scribbled something furiously in her notebook. By sunset, people were slow to leave. Some lingered in lawn chairs, watching the fireflies flicker across the pasture. A few kids chased each other with sticky cups in hand. It was the kind of evening Sam wished he could bottle and keep on a shelf. He and Lily packed up the last table just before dark. When they reached the front door, there it was again, a sealed envelope resting against the threshold. This one wasn't anonymous. It was typed, crisp, and signed at the bottom. "Redwood Partners offers a generous buyout. Final offer." Karen had spent years hiding behind paperwork, but Sam just started reading between the lines. The town hall building in Willow Creek wasn't much to look at, just a squat brick structure beside the old courthouse with faded trim and a flag that flapped lazily in the July heat. Sam stepped through the glass front doors carrying a weathered leather folder under one arm. It contained every letter, notice, and demand he'd received from the HOA, all carefully labeled and dated. Along with it were certified maps, zoning records, and a copy of the deed signed by his father in 1972. He didn't dress to make a statement, just khakis, a tucked-in shirt, and the same worn boots he wore to feed chickens. Still, something about the way he moved through the building, calm, deliberate, made heads lift as he passed. The clerk at the zoning desk was a thin man in his 60s with reading glasses sliding down his nose. He took his time reviewing the paperwork, humming under his breath as he flipped through the pages. After 10 minutes, he looked up. "You're in the clear, Mr. Carter. Always have been. That land's zoned ag, outside HOA jurisdiction. They can't force anything, not legally." Sam gave a single nod. "Appreciate you confirming." As he stepped back out into the heat, Hazel Truitt caught him near the sidewalk. The reporter from the Willow Gazette had been following the lemonade story with growing interest, and now she carried a notepad in one hand and a digital recorder in the other. "Mind if I ask a few questions?" she said. "Off the record first." Sam raised an eyebrow. "That's a trick lead-in, if I've ever heard one." She smiled. "Fair enough. Do you know who Mason Riggs is?" Sam hesitated. "Developer, tied to Karen somehow." Hazel nodded, flipping through a small binder she carried. "I did some digging. Turns out Redwood Partners, Riggs's company, has donated to several HOA board members over the past 2 years. Small amounts, spread across events, but enough to raise eyebrows." Sam didn't say anything, but something behind his eyes shifted. "And Karen?" Hazel continued. "She filed a request with the county 6 months ago to begin community expansion planning. It included language that would only make sense if she assumed your land was up for grabs." "Wasn't," Sam said flatly. "Still isn't." That evening, back at the farmhouse, Sam sat on the porch with his folder open, reading every line of every letter again. Lily sat beside him, drawing farm animals with crayons. When she asked what he was doing, he just said, "Studying for a test." Across town, Karen had called a closed HOA meeting at the Maple Ridge Clubhouse, the kind with no public invite, no posted agenda, just an inner circle gathered around polished tables and complimentary sparkling water. She stood at the head of the table, wearing a soft blue blazer and a fixed smile. "We're here to discuss a strategic motion, allocating discretionary funds for legal proceedings necessary to preserve community standards." One board member, a thin man named Ed, shifted in his seat. "You mean suing Sam Carter?" Karen's smile didn't move. "We're not suing anyone. We're simply exploring our options to maintain neighborhood harmony." At the back of the room, the door creaked open. Greg Turner and Linda Foster stepped in, carrying a binder and a manila envelope, respectively. "Sorry to barge in," Greg said, "but we've got a little something to add to the discussion." Karen blinked. "This is a private meeting." Linda held up a stack of papers. "Not when it involves our dues and a misuse of funds." They laid the documents on the table, emails between Karen and Mason Riggs, HOA correspondence referencing strategic acquisition plans, and a petition calling for a board vote to remove Karen from her position. Nearly 50 homeowner signatures were attached. Murmurs filled the room. And then Hazel walked in. "I hope no one minds," she said, holding up her press badge. "Public interest is high, and I'd hate to misquote anyone." Karen's voice, usually syrupy and composed, snapped like a twig. "This is ridiculous. You're all being manipulated. I've done more for this community than anyone. The town is standing in the way of progress." Her voice echoed across the room, too loud, too sharp. Hazel clicked a photo. "You want green spaces, playgrounds, a proper community center?" Karen continued, eyes darting. "That land is wasted. We could build something real?" "You mean something profitable," Greg cut in. "For Mason." Karen turned red. "You don't understand how these things work," Hazel scribbled. By the end of the meeting, no vote was taken, but the momentum had shifted. Board members looked at each other with uncertainty, and no one spoke in Karen's defense. She left in a huff, sunglasses on indoors, brushing past Hazel with a clipped, "No comment." Later that night, Sam sat on the porch, rocking slowly, while Lily counted fireflies. Hazel's car pulled up, headlights washing over the gravel before fading. She walked up with her notebook and stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Mind if I sit a minute?" Sam motioned to the chair beside him. Hazel didn't say anything at first, just looked out over the field, the moonlight silver on the corn rows. "They filed today," she said finally. "Redwood, rezoning request, targeting your property by name. They think they'll win. 1 room, 1 vote, and a lifetime of legacy on the line." The Willow Creek Civic Center hadn't seen a crowd like this since the Centennial Parade got rained out in 2008 and the whole town took shelter indoors. Folding chairs scraped across the tile floor, lined up in loose rows under flickering ceiling fans and faded flags. Someone had brought in a box of lemonade jugs and styrofoam cups, unspoken homage to the little stand that had started it all. At the far end of the room, a makeshift podium sat beneath a banner still reading Maple Ridge HOA, Stronger Together. Karen Whitmore adjusted her blazer in the mirror just outside the hall, fingers trembling slightly as she reapplied lipstick. She had a speech in her hand, pages clipped and highlighted, filled with phrases like community standards, property value preservation, and forward-facing vision. She didn't notice Hazel snapping a picture through the half-open door. Inside, Sam Carter sat in the second row, Lily beside him, clutching a half-full lemonade cup. She'd dressed herself, yellow dress, lopsided ponytail, and her old rabbit tucked under one arm. Sam offered her a gentle smile, then stood as the board president tapped the mic. "We're here tonight to address a matter raised formally by community petition," the man said. "A call for leadership review brought forth by residents regarding board chair Karen Whitmore." Karen took the podium without waiting. "Thank you, Richard," she said smoothly, flipping to her first page. "Neighbors, friends, I know the past few weeks have felt unusual, but we mustn't let sentiment override reason." Her speech rolled on, about maintaining a vision of order, about preserving the long-term investment value of our homes. She alluded vaguely to problematic elements and external disruption, never naming Sam directly, but pointing in his direction more than once. Finally, she leaned in. If we don't act now, the integrity of our neighborhood will erode. I've spoken to developers who want to help, build parks, better roads, community spaces. All they need is our cooperation." A murmur rippled through the room. Greg Turner shifted in his seat. Hazel raised her pen. When Karen stepped down, Sam took a quiet breath and rose. No papers, no notes, just a folded slip of weathered notebook paper in his hand. "My wife used to keep a journal," he said, voice steady. "She wrote in it every night after the chores were done. I found this after she passed." He unfolded the page and read slowly. "A farm isn't built with money, but with memory, with fences held together by stories and fields planted with patience. That's what makes it home." The room went still. Sam looked up. "This town isn't made stronger by lines on a map. It's made stronger by knowing the name of the person who pulls your car from a ditch, by waving at your neighbor even when you disagree. I've had this land since I was a boy. My family's lived here since before there was a subdivision." He paused, looking directly at the board. "You can vote however you want tonight, but just know, this isn't just about me. It's about what kind of place Willow Creek wants to be." There was silence as he sat. Then a voice from the back piped up. "She fined me for hanging wind chimes too loud." A ripple of laughter followed. Another man stood. "She told my kid to stop drawing chalk pictures on the sidewalk, said it violated uniform ground presentation." Then Linda rose, holding a thick packet. "I have HOA records here, emails from Karen coordinating with a developer named Mason Riggs, Redwood Partners. They've been eyeing Sam's land since last spring." Hazel stepped up beside her, flipping her notepad. "I have verified records of campaign donations, contract language, and a zoning pre-application filed just this week to absorb Carter Farm into Maple Ridge." Karen stood abruptly. "This is a coordinated smear. None of this is illegal." "But is it right?" someone called out. Greg spoke last. "We want leadership that listens, not one that threatens. I call for an immediate vote." The board president nodded, voice tight. "All HOA members, please raise your hands. Aye for removal, nay to retain." Hands went up. Dozens. Karen's eyes darted around the room, watching as people she'd thought loyal slowly turned their palms toward the ceiling. All opposed? Only 3 hands. Richard looked at her, then quietly spoke into the mic. "Motion carries. Effective immediately, Karen Whitmore is removed as chair of the Maple Ridge HOA." No one clapped at first. The silence settled heavy. Then Lily leaned toward Sam and whispered, "Is it over?" Sam smiled faintly. "Almost." As Karen grabbed her briefcase and turned sharply on her heel, Hazel raised her camera. The shutter clicked once, loud as a firecracker. Karen paused, adjusted her sunglasses, indoors again, and walked straight out the door. Outside, the evening air was thick with humidity. Sam walked toward his truck, ready to drive home and maybe, for the first time in weeks, sleep without checking the porch for mail. But taped neatly to his windshield was a plain white envelope. No seal, just a single typed sentence inside. "You won this round." But money doesn't forget. The lemonade stand was back, but this time it wasn't just about the lemonade. Morning sun spilled gently across the Carter fields, casting long golden shadows over the rows of sweet corn and the weathered red barn. The cicadas had yet to begin their buzzing, and the only sounds were the clinking of mason jars and the occasional giggle from Lily, as she arranged cups in a neat little triangle on her folding table. A new hand-painted banner stretched above her. "Karen Free Lemonade, sweet and simple." "Do you think people will still come now that the fight's over?" she asked, looking up from her setup. Sam leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed, a thermos of coffee resting nearby. He took in the fluttering banner, the sunlight, and the gentle swell of music already drifting from town. "Maybe even more," he said. A light breeze carried the smell of baked apples and hay bales from the direction of Willow Creek's Summer Fest, already underway at the town square. It was the first time in years that the festival had expanded all the way to the Carter property line, by popular request. The lemonade stand had become something more than a summer novelty. It was a symbol. By mid-morning, a steady stream of cars had lined up along the roadside, people hopping out in sandals and sun hats. Kids rode bikes up the gravel path, baskets rattling with pie tins and jars of jam. June arrived in her cherry print apron, balancing a tray of biscuits and a thermos of sweet tea. Greg and Linda followed, carrying camp chairs and plastic flags. Hazel was among them too, snapping pictures for her feature article. She had a notepad in her back pocket, but mostly she just chatted with folks, catching up. Her story: The Lemonade Rebellion. How a Cup Sparked a Community, had made the front page of the Willow Gazette and was now making the rounds on regional blogs and local radio segments. Someone even joked about turning it into a Hallmark movie. Karen's house had gone quiet weeks ago. The for sale sign out front had a red under contract sticker slapped across it, and her SUV hadn't been seen since. Rumors swirled, of course, that she'd moved out of state, that she'd been offered a condo far from any HOA board. No one knew for sure, and fewer cared. At noon, a makeshift stage had been set up beside the town square's old oak tree, where a bluegrass band had just finished their set. Richard, the new HOA president, a soft-spoken retiree with a voice like dry corn husks, took the microphone and tapped it once. "We'd like to invite Mr. Sam Carter to say a few words," he said. Sam walked up slowly, dusting off his hat as he approached. The crowd quieted. Children fidgeted. Lily stood near the front with a lemonade cup in both hands. "I won't take long," Sam began. "This summer's been a strange one. Started with a rooster in a barn and a few folks worrying more about rules than reasons." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. "But I've lived here a long time. My wife and I raised a family here. We planted trees we never sat under, built things we hoped would last longer than we would. And when that's the way you live, you come to understand something important. Land may belong to a person on paper, but in truth, it belongs to everyone who remembers it." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. "This isn't about fences or paint colors. It's about neighbors, about standing your ground but doing it with kindness, about lemonade and legacy." The applause was quiet at first, but grew into a warm swell. Richard stepped forward once more, clearing his throat. "As the new HOA president," he said, "I'd like to offer a formal apology on behalf of the board. All funds collected for legal action have been returned, and we've passed a motion to limit our enforcement to within HOA boundaries, where it belongs." Sam simply nodded. "Appreciated." Later that afternoon, he and Lily walked together to the edge of the farm, where the gravel met the township road. Sam carried a wooden sign under one arm, freshly carved and stained. He planted it with care, tamping the dirt down with his boot heel. The letters were simple, clean, and proud. Carter Farm, rooted. Since 1941, no HOA, just neighbors. The sun dipped low, washing the field in amber. Lily climbed onto her brand-new yellow bike, a surprise from June and Greg, paid for with lemonade quarters and a little help from the whole town. She rode down the dirt path, streamers flapping from the handlebars, calling out to each neighbor she passed. Sam watched her from the porch, a glass of lemonade in hand, and smiled. The breeze shifted slightly, carrying laughter and fiddle music from the festival through the trees. Peace had returned to Willow Creek, and this time it felt like it was here to stay. The fight may have started over a glass of lemonade, but it ended with a town rediscovering what it truly meant to be neighbors. In standing his ground, Sam Carter didn't just protect his land. He reminded everyone that dignity, legacy, and quiet courage still matter. When good folks come together, Even the loudest voices of control can't drown out the sound of community. And just like a fence built with care, justice stands strongest when it's rooted deep and held up by many hands. Some things, like family land and a child's lemonade stand, are worth defending, one drop at a time.